My name is Parthasarathy. I'm a partner technology and security services at Deloitte. And one of the areas that we work very closely with a lot of organizations is in the area of cloud strategy, risk management, and security for the cloud itself. So what I'll be covering today are just a few very high-level agenda items. What is the cloud? I know that most of you are already very familiar, so we'll breeze through that particular section and we'll talk about how cloud impacts organization, not only from a technology perspective, but from a process, people, change management, and different things that you need to be considering as you look at cloud strategies for your organization. Cloud solutions implementation approach, and then at a very high level, some key metrics that you need to basically embark on to measure success of cloud. Just so that I can get a gauge, how many of you are actually, I would say, looking at cloud in terms of implementing it within your organization? Are you looking at cloud more from an internal service, or are you looking at it as a service that you can provide your end customer? Internal. And private cloud or public cloud? Hybrid. Okay. Great. So I think as most of you do embark in terms of cloud and the cloud, various cloud services, one of the key things are to essentially look at the trends within the cloud environment and how it essentially can translate and actually match up to what your organization is looking at. How does the organization prepare itself for cloud solution implementations in terms of technology, in terms of your application infrastructure, in terms of the skill sets that you have, the people that you're going to have, change management, because all of a sudden there's a significant organization change. What could be the potential implications to business processes and procedures? Because if you were looking at a traditional ERP and if you were all of a sudden looking to put it on a cloud, then there are other implications related not only to the process and procedures, but also in terms of governance, security, privacy, and all our customer data and other things that you really need to be looking at. How does cloud technology affect decision rights and governance? What are the implications to change communication and training? This is an area that we've seen in the last 1.5 years gets ignored in terms of change, communication, and training, because while people think of cloud as a technology implementation, there's a significant disruption of the business processes and how organizations view it. And there's impact, almost a ripple effect, not only in terms of the end user, but also in terms of the technology organization and the business organization, which is either supported or which is supporting it. Which cloud solutions are the right fit for the business? How do employees respond to configuration or customization dynamics? Because one of the key things, if you look at from a cloud adoption, previously most of the things that traditional IT organization was focused on was taking an application, doing customizations, and then putting it within to basically meet the need. But as you look at cloud, and as you look at the cloud as a service, whether it's coming from an external organization or you're building it internally, there can't be too many customization as such of the cloud service itself. And the reason you're really going to cloud is that you possibly need to have better economies of scale, better agility, and in this particular case, you will be looking at more configuration changes of the environment rather than customization. So that's a significant change in mindset in terms of how applications are adopted within the enterprise, or how IT infrastructure itself is selected and adopted. What are the major risks? I think most organizations are sitting on the fence today because of the risks related to security, privacy, business continuity. There are a significant number of questions that they have. And so while I also do a lot of consulting in the US and UK market, while there, if I look at the traction, I think it's been that much more. And we've implemented a couple of solutions by Amazon or Microsoft and others, where we've done a lot of solution development for organizations, very large scale deployment. But when I come here and look at it in the local market, the cloud adoption seems more so in the SMB segment in terms of the public cloud adoption, because of the risk that they are willing to take. And any organization which are very mature from a branding perspective or in the market perspective, we've noticed that more of the adoption there is more on the private or the hybrid. How do organizations know when it is the right time to move to the cloud? How many of you feel that your organization should really be on the cloud? Okay. Any specific business reasons that you feel that your organization should be on the cloud? Flexibility. Any other reasons why you feel that your organization should be on the cloud? Cost. Okay. What are some of key metrics in defining success of the cloud? Anybody in an advanced stage where you actually have to demonstrate your senior management about the success of your cloud initiative? Okay, I think we heard cost reduction is a key area. In terms of true cost reduction comes if you are going to a completely public cloud. Because if you take private cloud, you're looking at hybrid models and other things in terms of whether it's, if you take 4 or 5 years ago, whether it's virtualization or whatever that's happened, I think they already provide significant amount of saving. And true economies of scale will add cost reduction based on the analysis that we have done will purely come from public cloud. But if you're a large enterprise organization with disparate infrastructure, multi-geography, multi-locations, and you have multiple IT teams and other things, then you can even think of a private cloud which can essentially get you the kind of cost savings that you're looking at, because you can get the synergies and across the various IT platforms, applications, processes, people who are actually managing. Reducing capital investment. Initial demand in the cloud space, as we look at it from moving to a CapEx and OpEx model, I think everybody talks about that. But as you look at some of the aging infrastructure that most enterprises have, if they really need to go into the cloud, there is initial spending in terms of the cloud infrastructure itself. And also, if you look at application re-engineering, people skill sets, training, and how you basically do it. Over a period of time, I would say 2 to 3 year kind of a time frame. If you're looking at a long horizon, then reduced capital investment and return on investment can definitely be demonstrated. Faster implementation, definitely true. In terms of if you are looking to provide your, service to your customer, time to market, and getting the service up and running very fast. Same thing, internal service to your internal customers, again something that can be done very fast. But however, again, when it comes to customization, there are significant number of restrictions. So I think that is where the careful evaluation of the cloud platform itself is going to be significantly important. Agility in terms of scaling up and down, in terms of on-demand services, the true utilization of cloud is going to be when you can purely get to a utility model. But I would say a word of caution here, most providers still do not have a very clearly defined model in terms of usage and how they chargeback mechanisms that they will be charging you at. Even if you take Amazon Web Services, I think their models are still more on the time window and the kind of usage that you're going to use rather than actual usage of the infrastructure. Smarter decisions, I would say better way to possibly from a long-term perspective, if you can get your act together within your enterprise, better way to possibly run a lot of your enterprise architecture, better way to run some of your data centers. And if you notice, a lot of organizations are definitely moving to the cloud. Value proposition, again, summarizing financial improvements, business agility, increased depth of business capabilities. Cloud adoption, more than 40% of the companies are using SaaS, and of those, there are estimated 66% that plan to increase their investment. Let's now quickly move into cloud adoption and approach. If you were moving to a cloud, and if you looked at the traditional service types that organizations evaluate, whether it's an application as a service, infrastructure as a service, then one of the key things that you would need to do is have a very good understanding of your IT services portfolio. When I talk of your IT services portfolio, depending on what you are really trying to do, for example, if you're looking at application as a service, then you need to understand your application landscape, your application architecture, what is it that you really desire to get out of this particular cloud re-engineering or cloud adoption kind of a strategy, and then look at the technical feasibility. Look at the technical feasibility. So for example, if you were looking at application complexity, people embark on cloud strategies for application without understanding that some of these cloud applications cannot be ported on the cloud. There's significant revamp on some of these enterprise applications that need to be done. So I think understand the application complexity. Understand what is the kind of network bandwidth and throughput that you're expecting. If you are looking at the application and it has to serve pages, it has to serve content, it has to serve different things to end users, your customers, then understand what are the kinds of bandwidth requirements that you have. What are the kind of infrastructure requirements? Whether it's in terms of backup, DR, serving of the pages, so understand in terms of storage, understand in terms of volumetric, understand in terms of the overall infrastructure, what is required from an infrastructure perspective. Understand if this application itself, if it is a third-party product, understand from the product vendor whether this could be a logical virtualization candidate. Some vendors essentially, as they look at it, they do have product path where they will provide you a virtualization image where you can essentially then look at this particular application as a virtualization candidate. But however, if it's a homegrown application, you have to look at whether you have the capacity and capabilities internally to see if you can actually convert that application to this kind of a model. Infrastructure specialization. Significant challenge here. Most organizations, there are at least 3 organizations that I'm working with who have embarked on the cloud, but then they realize that they do not have the right infrastructure capabilities from a people perspective or a management perspective to actually manage it, and now they are actually looking at completely outsourcing that particular infrastructure more as a managed service. Business feasibility. What is the criticality of the application? If you move it to the cloud, can you still meet your business critical requirements, whether it's a RTO, RPO, performance requirement, end user GUI requirement? Look at the application criticality and make sure if it is a very high critical application, then I would recommend that it should not be a first candidate for you to choose for moving to the cloud. If you're experimenting, do not experiment with a very critical application, but if you do have the talent, you have the capability to do it, you have the right service provider, and you want to pick up that particular application, it may generate the right business case and ROI for you, but however, there are also going to be significant challenges. User impact. What is going to be the user impact in terms of if you were to adopt from a cloud perspective? What are the service level requirements? Contract leave lot of things in gray. A service provider today, as you look at it, you may be thinking you're outsourcing your service. The question that you have to really look at is whether from a service level requirement and contracting, whether you actually are able to meet all of your organization commitments. Internal and external facing, are these customer facing, are these more internal user facing? Is there confidential customer data? If you were a provider who is significantly providing services to overseas customers, then you have to be that much more careful because there are significant amount of privacy and other regulations that apply. While India is adopting the privacy standards and privacy regulations with the changes that are coming up, but I would still say more of the focus has to be if you are focusing on European and other data, because they are extremely strict on the handling of our data usage, the handling of the data and how it needs to be managed. Then the next question that would come is cost benefit analysis. You looked at your, let's say you went down the stream of application, looking at application and moving them to the cloud. What is the cost benefit your organization. While you look at cost reduction, there may be initial lot of capex and all things that needs to be put in. Over a period of time, it possibly balances out. But does your organization have the appetite to put in that initial capital investment? And do you have the ability to justify the cost benefit and actually show it over a 3 to 5 year horizon? What is the transition cost? Right now, you may have internal teams, or you may have an external provider providing you the application support. All of a sudden, you are moving into the cloud. Either it is with that particular provider, or it is with some other provider outside who is providing a specialized service, or it may be your internal team itself which is managing it. But then there are transition costs in terms of if it's your internal team, it's in terms of training, in terms of cultural adaptation, in terms of how are they going to manage it going forward. If it is in terms of a third-party provider, what are the transition costs involved? Operating model implications related to whether it's for your customer, it's for your internal, how are you going to continue to manage and support this particular application, and whether it's going to be a managed service, are you still going to be able to meet your service level requirements? All of those will come from the operating model. And the other key thing is most organizations fail to forget is the role of IT. If you decide to move your application stack to a cloud, all of a sudden the role of IT moves from being the hands-on provider for that application in terms of day-to-day support, management and all things, and they start moving into a governance kind of model. And I heard somebody talk about reduction of staff in some one of the enterprises. And be very careful on that as you embark on something like this, because while it can reduce cost, there are hidden costs related to the provider and what they're going to provide to you. So while cloud may seem very appealing in terms of reducing costs, but you have to look at some of the people that you may have to retrench or retrain and all things. What is it that you're really going to do about redeploying some of these? What are the key management considerations from a risk, from a governance, from an ongoing management, from a service level, and your commitment to your shareholders? So as you look at the entire portfolio, taking it through all of these evaluation approach, then you come to actually you're coming and formulating a cloud strategy or a business case that you can actually present to your organization. You have to evaluate whether it's a software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. We're also seeing a lot of traction on business process as a service. So each one of these, what is happening is in the traditional BPO and KPO organization, they are starting to provide these particular services in terms of business process as a service. And so first judgment that you really need to make is what is it that you are really going to attack, whether the software, the infrastructure, or the platform. And if you look at each one of these layers, there are some very specialized providers. It's a sample range of providers. Deloitte is not vouching for any of these guys. You have to essentially do your own evaluation, look at it in terms of whether it meets your business needs, does it meet your requirements, do they satisfy your requirements. And for example, infrastructure as a service, Amazon, we work significantly with Amazon, IBM, Terramark, and a few other organizations. Same on software as a service, we are seeing significant explosion related to Salesforce.com, SAP, and others who are looking to essentially push their service in this particular space. So as you looked at your strategy, so let's say you figured out whether that you want to do application as a service or an infrastructure as a service. So you made your first call in terms of hosted applications, your infrastructure software, your operating system, virtualization, servers, connectivity. You looked at all of those. Then you have to look at the service type itself. Let's say you made a selection of a service type. You have to define it. What is the adoption maturity? What are the cloud and what is the maturity of that particular service type in the industry segment? Say, let's say you were in the utility segment and you wanted to do platform as a service. You have to go out there and figure out if the service providers that are providing those particular software or infrastructure as a service, are they mature enough to support your particular environment and able to meet the service level requirements that you have? And then obviously there are going to be the cloud delivery models, whether it's going to be the public cloud, the virtual private cloud, or the hybrid or pure private cloud. Then what you need to really do.
Just wanted to point, Just wanted to point out the 2 minutes are left. Just wanted to point out that 2 minutes are left.
How much time do I have to speak?
You had half an hour, so that'll get over by 1:20.
As you look at level 1, level 2, level 3, essentially what you're doing is if you were to take your application portfolio, you do your workload analysis, you move it into the suitability selection, you do the business case and operational analysis, and then you get into the execution. So you have to run it through a very rigorous model. So those of you who are from the traditional SDLC or from an infrastructure kind of a background, this should not be something new to you. You do your gating process within your organization. It's just that you have to adopt it into the cloud model, where then you say that depending on whether I'm looking at application, infrastructure, whatever it is, once you have a business case requirement, then you run it through this particular gating in terms of looking at the workload attributes, application characteristics, then look at the technical reviews with application owners or the infrastructure team, input from the application business, what are the SLA requirements, what is the total cost of ownership, TCO from a data and analysis, what are the stakeholders input. So you need to go through the entire gating process. So this is something that has to be done. And from a long-term perspective also, it's very important to get these kind of justification in place so that at a later point you are able to justify the investment within the organization. These are again details getting into the criteria itself. If anybody is interested in talking, we've done quite a few of these and we can definitely talk a lot more in detail in terms of if you look at the workload analysis, we look at application criticality, complexity, candidate, commodity infrastructure. We look at the network bandwidth, infrastructure requirements, shared environment, shared software stack, internal and external facing, user impact, looking at talking to the vendor, understanding if they have a roadmap for their particular product to get into the web, and doing proof of concept and actually taking it to the business organization to actually demonstrate it to them. Impact within an organization. Significant impact in terms of infrastructure, in terms of operations, in terms of the organization and its people. So it is definitely a disruptive technology. So as you look at it, even if you are embarking on hybrid and you're looking at a proof of concept, I would encourage that you look at all these particular factors, because when you eventually roll it out as an end-to-end service within the organization, there's going to be significant impact. Just like if you take when it goes back to the early 80s when organizations used to traditionally do everything by themselves, and all of a sudden there was an outsourcing and offshoring and other thing, and it was significantly disruptive. I think same way you need to look at each one of these factors from a people, process, technology, organization, governance, and other thing, and how you basically. Key thing is how familiar are the end user groups with cloud solutions, who's impacted. You can see some of the areas that I've talked about, anticipated roles, what is the comfort level of the leaders. Ultimately, it is about convincing your leadership team in terms of whether it's in whatever the business case you're justifying, to have your leadership team back you, because this is something is definitely there to stay. It's definitely a forward movement, but how you adopt it, what is the agility within your organization to basically adopt this? Are you going to be the early adopter? Are you going to be waiting in the wings and watching for other industry sectors to adopt it? You will have to basically make a business case and decide on it. What is the impact, desired business outcome, process, and there are going to be a lot of changes in terms of your process, roles, your governance structure. How will it be addressed? You have to go through the regimentation of, just like how you would have taken any other business process or application, you have to go through the regimentation process of consensus buying, your evaluation from a technology platform and other things. Do your end user workshops where you essentially can convince them about what needs to be done there. and then finally actually rolling it out as a service, and make sure that your business is totally tied in. Because if you are purely looking at it from an IT project, then you're going to have significant challenges actually rolling it out.
So I'm sorry, we've run out of time. You want to wrap it up?
Yeah, what I'll do is I have a few more slides. I should be able to wrap it. Yeah?
But you're cutting short on their lunchtime. If they're okay with it, I have no problem. Go ahead.
Okay. So thanks. It's always very difficult to basically be put between the sandwich and the cloud presentation. So I know that you want to come down to reality. My apologies for that. But I think you, from an organization perspective, then you should have managed the previous speaker much better, right? Okay. Adoption readiness, cloud will vary. C-suite looks at it purely from a return on investment. For them, it is business, numbers, ROI, right? Now let's come down to the IT leadership. IT leadership is constantly grappling with, if I bring in the cloud, am I going to lose control? Is it going to become an outsourced service? Is it going to be outsourced provider? What are the changes? What are the skill set changes that I need to do within my organization? Previously, I had a very lean, nimble IT organization with significant skill sets. All of a sudden, I have to move more into a governance kind of a model. Unless you're doing all of this internally, then it's great, because then you're providing the managed service, you're managing the infrastructure, you're doing everything what you would have done previously. But now if you're taking a part of the service, carving it out and giving it to somebody like an Amazon and who's providing it to you as a service, then all of a sudden the IT role and everything changes, because now all of a sudden you're just more of managing Amazon to essentially provide the right level of services, service levels that your organization is expecting. Managers and staff, this is again where you need to constantly communicate, and the consensus building is very important, because people do get scared about cloud adoption. You may have not heard about it in that particular context, but people do are scared about their job security and what needs to be done. So it's a question of convincing the business, convincing your leadership, convincing your staff, convincing your customer that this is the right form of service. It is not an easy challenge to go forward, but I would say if you can make the journey, it's a success that you can definitely put a check mark on your profile. Cloud impacts more than just end users. Diminishing role of traditional IT. As I mentioned, IT's role has to change. Intertwined with business and technology. You are going to change the business model. There have to be certain changes in the way the business model is looked at. There has to be some kind of adaptation to the cloud services and cloud technology. Security and privacy, huge issue in terms of what you really need to manage, because all of a sudden an auditor who could have traditionally touched and felt your data center, all of a sudden it's an abstract piece of information. It's a question of how do you convince your organization and how do you convince your external auditor that you are managing security and privacy. Externalization of service delivery, increased cloud adoption, understanding this again. And the last one is more about your people, your skill sets, and what you need to really train them on and what they really need to do. Because all of a sudden you are bringing in some significantly technologies which are going to disrupt the infrastructure, and these are emerging technologies. There's not that much of skill set. You will have to train your people to do that. Change management, communication, training at all levels going to become significant. So it's not a pure IT-driven initiative. It's a business transformation. It is essentially a disruptive technology. So you have to go through a traditional path of, if you were implementing SAP or an ERP solution in your organization, the kind of disruption that it would do on your business processes and the training and the people and all things, the same kind of regimentation that you would need to do on change management, communication, training. Speed and agility in terms of traditional versus cloud. Speed and agility definitely is there in terms of go-to-market and what you can do. Customize versus configure, I covered this particular aspect. Previously, you were actually doing customization of your infrastructure. All of a sudden, the only thing that you'll be doing is configuration of your infrastructure. subscription versus upgrade cultural impacts, because most traditional providers are not able to provide you the right kind of chargeback mechanism. So again, while you're looking at significant ROI, unless you can really negotiate very hard with your service provider, you are going to face a challenge in terms of the subscription model. Emerging versus traditional IT culture is about the governance mindset, more of the program management, more of the vendor governance, and then also the technical skill sets that you need to bring into the organization. Very high level cloud adoption conceptual framework. Look at the cloud benefits: staff realignment, growth, world-class services, scalability, agility, elasticity, time to market, tax advantages, innovation, economies of scale, strategic position, cost reallocation. On the left is where you have the maturity of the service provider itself in various areas, whether it's in terms of ERP, whether it's in terms of CRM, whether it's in terms of infrastructure. Then you look at the risks. You look at security, privacy, availability, multi-tenancy, regulatory requirements, vendor management. So look at it from a risk perspective. Bring all of these legs together. So consider it to be three legs of the stool, right? The benefits, the risks, and the market maturity. Bring it into your organizational context. Then understand from a cloud adoption perspective, what is it that you can really take up and demonstrate your organization. Because if you go back to the intranet days and the internet days, most organizations who really embarked on the internet did a lot of internal intranet, internal selling and all things before they could actually go out and put their customer-facing application or put their application on the web. And it took a lot of convincing, a lot of consensus building internally. And over a period of time, the infrastructure also is matured to address a lot of these requirements. So as you embark within your organization from a cloud adoption perspective, I would suggest that unless you have a significant reason to go big bang, take the baby steps that are required, build the internal consensus, work with your cloud services provider, work with the consulting organization which could possibly build this particular business case for your organization. Take it to your senior management and put a roadmap for a 3 to 5 year kind of a roadmap which you can actually take and work through your organization. And I am convinced, and I would say so should most of you, that in terms of their definite return on investment on the cloud, there are challenges, there are risks, but this is essentially leading edge. This is where most organizations eventually will go, and the question is going to be whether you want to essentially be on that particular vehicle or you want to be left behind. Just like if you did not have an internet presence some way back in the 90s, every organization wanted to have an E in front of them, right? Similar to that is the question of maybe it's a C now that you need to put in front of your organization. And it's a question of whether you adopt it now or later. Cloud is something that most organizations will adopt for business agility, for time to market, for return on investment, to reduce from economies of scale. And this is the trend. It's not so much from a hype and that you need to follow that. It's more of it does make business sense and you need to move to it eventually when you have the right business case. Thank you.
Thank you very much.